Happy Ever After by Paul Dolan. Social narratives, or widely held beliefs about how we should spend our lives, have an impact on all of us. We are supposed to aspire to achievement, riches, and education. Marriage and having children are seen as fundamental life goals that must be accomplished. Being childless or, even worse, having an affair are seen as unusual or shameful decisions. Social narratives can be useful in assisting with world navigation. However, they can also prevent us from being happy by pressuring us to live up to expectations rather than letting our emotions and experiences guide us. Many people have fulfilled all of society's expectations, including holding executive positions in flourishing businesses, working hard, getting married, and having children, but they are nevertheless incredibly unhappy. So perhaps it's time we gave the social narratives that shape our decisions in life a bit more serious consideration. You'll discover just how frequently the actions we feel we should take end up making our lives miserable. You'll see how living according to our experiences and instincts rather than society's standards can lead to happier lives. You'll discover things like why secretaries are happier than the wealthy CEOs they work for, why married individuals aren't happier than divorced people, and why you have less free choice than you think. As the phrase goes, money makes the world go round. The desire for wealth is undoubtedly embedded in modern society. Over half of Americans said that being wealthy was important, according to a 2008 Pew Research Center survey. In addition, a 2014 American Heartland Monitor survey revealed that 50% of respondents thought that having money is essential to live a decent life rather than just being significant. Additionally, the Sunday Times in the UK produces an annual rich list honoring those with the greatest incomes. But in truth, having a prosperous life does not necessarily depend on having a lot of money. The American Time of Use survey has given us solid data on this topic. In this poll, around 20,000 participants are asked questions regarding their daily activities' impact on their pleasure, feeling of purpose, stress, and level of fatigue. It demonstrates that, up until a certain point, happiness grows in association with money but then actually declines as people get richer. Americans who make between $50,000 and $75,000 a year are the happiest. The sweet spot for happiness is between $50,000 and $75,000, while those earning $100,000 are no happier than those making $25,000. So maybe our goal should be to earn between $50,000 and $75,000, which is just enough, rather than trying to earn even more. For the majority of people, that would indicate an increase in income. It also demonstrates that having huge wealth won't make you happier. That's especially true considering how significantly comparisons play a role in the relationship between income and happiness. According to a 2007 research by status and consumption specialist Bob Frank, most people would choose to live in a home that was 3,000 square feet and bordered by 2,000 square foot homes rather than one that was 4,000 square feet and surrounded by 6,000 square foot homes. To most of us, that is relatable. Perhaps your $500 bonus at work made you happy. Then, when you learn that a coworker has received $1,000, your elation abruptly transforms into rage. Being wealthy does not guarantee happiness, especially if you are surrounded by people who are equally or more wealthy than you. And as we'll see in a moment, success and wealth are equivalent. How important is success to you? Initially in our professions, the response is frequently yes. Being successful and well paid is either extremely important or one of the most important things in life, according to about 2/3 of all 18 to 34-year-olds in the United States. Few of us fantasize about being average or yearn for a life of mediocrity. However, a lot of people place an excessive importance on achievement and the accolades and status that come along with it, at the price of their genuine experiences and regular workdays. Many of us are aware of individuals who, despite being dissatisfied with their jobs, have persuaded themselves that they are doing something worthwhile because of their position's prestige. The author once spoke with a friend who works for a prestigious media organization. She talked for a while about how sad she was, lamenting her bosses, her coworkers, and her commute. She concluded her tirade by stating, "Of course, it's fantastic to have a position at such a prestigious firm," without displaying any apparent sarcasm. There is evidence to support the idea that roles that are successful in the eyes of society are not always happy ones. According to social expectations, practicing law is preferable to working as a florist. But according to a 2012 City and Guild study, 87% of florists and only 64% of lawyers indicated they were content with their jobs. The Legatum Institute conducted a study in 2014 to determine the professions with the highest life satisfaction and highest wages. Despite receiving extraordinarily high salaries, it was discovered that senior executives were no happier than their secretaries. How can we increase our level of workplace happiness? Well, cutting back on your workload can be a smart first step. According to the American Time of Use study, those who work between 21 and 30 hours per week experience the highest levels of satisfaction and sense of purpose. If you work more or even less hours, your level of unhappiness rises. Just like with money, it appears that if you want to live a happy life, a just enough attitude to achievement is optimal. We should be aware that while moving up the corporate ladder may bring you more money, position, and respect, it may not necessarily make you a happier person. Do you have a romantic partner? If so, you might want to think about the future of it realistically. Any particular relationship is significantly more likely to end in a split than in a happily ever after, according to a Stanford University study. Most people believe that finding true love and getting married are essential components of living a happy life. Over 90% of Germans who responded to the author's analysis of a 7,000-person survey conducted since 2013 stated they thought having a committed marriage was crucial to their life. Furthermore, getting married has advantages. Sociologists believe that having a partner serves as a source of support and encouragement as well as a buffer against unfavorable life occurrences, which may explain why married people tend to be healthier and better off than singles. However, are we genuinely happier after marriage? After a brief honeymoon period, it appears that the answer is no. The years just before and following a wedding are particularly joyful, according to data from a German socio-economic panel that has tracked a sizable sample of people for about 20 years. The same research, however, reveals that following marriage, the same amount of persons experience lower satisfaction levels as those who experience higher satisfaction levels. This is supported by the American Time of Use study, which adds an intriguing twist. It turns out that unless their wife or husband is present when the topic is posed, married persons do not generally claim to be happier than their single peers. No one reported being happier than those who had divorced than those whose wives were not around and could, thus, be honest without offending them. If we acknowledge that getting married isn't always the best path to happiness, we should also give up the idea that being single is worse than getting married. There is a pervasive perception that singles are sad. According to an Israeli study, participants consistently gave singles a lower rating because they assumed they were unhappy after reading similar biographies of married and single people and rating them for traits like contentment. Laws like the marriage tax allowance in the United Kingdom, which lowers taxes for married couples, codify this discrimination. But when the data indicates that marriage doesn't actually make people happier than being single, aggressively supporting marriage seems inappropriate. Therefore, we ought to have less rigid ideas about connections. And as you'll see in a moment, that also applies to the way we view infidelity. Infidelity. It's such a terrible transgression that it was stated twice in the 10 Commandments. Not only must you abstain from adultery, but you must also refrain from desiring your neighbor's wife. For millennia, people have believed that adultery is morally wrong. According to official figures from the United Kingdom, 63% of men and 70% of women think that cheating is always bad. According to Pew Research Center data, 84% of Americans consider affairs to be morally repugnant. Instead of seriously analyzing the issue, we have just accepted the social narrative that adultery is evil in and of itself. Despite the fact that adultery is a simple fact of life, this continues. Given the likelihood that we cannot sustain sexual attraction to our partner throughout our lives, this may not come as a surprise. Google searches for sexless marriage are more than 8 times more prevalent than searches for loveless marriage, suggesting that many people are in sexless but loving relationships, according to data scientist Seth Stevens-Davidowitz. Therefore, adultery is scarcely surprising, especially when you realize that it is quite normal in nature. Only one species, owl monkeys, which reproduce annually when the female of the species is fertile, has sexual monogamy as its natural state. And it is obvious that adultery is a common occurrence. According to recent UK study, 1 in 3 men and 1 in 3 women will cheat at some point during their marriages. A 2010 Bloomberg story said that in the United States, the percentages are 25% for males and 15% for women. So maybe it's time to start accepting that people, like other animals, have a mate-seeking instinct that isn't always satisfied by a life partner. Being more accepting of consensually non-monogamous relationships in which participants concur that some level of infidelity is acceptable could be a good place to start. According to a University of Michigan study, people in these partnerships typically report higher levels of trust, intimacy, friendship, and contentment than their fully monogamous colleagues, as well as lower levels of jealousy. So it's time to acknowledge that there are options for our romantic relationships in life that do not only represent the monogamous social norm but also the realities of human experience. Dolan claims that many people will be happier if we can accomplish this. Let's now examine another relationship decision that is generally accepted: having kids. You believe that you have discovered a mate who brings you happiness. You've checked the box for marriage. And you have remained devoted. Right now, if you want to follow social narratives, having children is the obvious next step in life. People who choose to defy the norm and have no children are now perceived as strangely self-interested, favoring beautiful vacations and leisurely weekends above the selfless task of raising children. Low birth rate civilizations have been referred to as depressed by Pope Francis. And just see how Jennifer Aniston is treated. In spite of all her accomplishments, she frequently receives sympathy for being childless. And women suffer the most since they are stigmatized more than males for choosing to not have children in every place where data is available. There are a lot of valid reasons not to have children, despite the expectation that we should. They are extremely pricey to begin with. In the United Kingdom, the average cost of parenting a child until her 20th birthday is close to $250,000. Children also significantly harm the environment. A research from Oregon State University compared the effects of having fewer children to those of installing double glazing, having one's vehicle's mileage, recycling rubbish, and using low-energy light bulbs. By engaging in all 6 activities, you might significantly lower your carbon footprint by 486 tons. Having one fewer child, though? 20 times as much carbon is removed, 9,441 tons. Furthermore, having children might have unfavorable repercussions on your life, ranging from boredom to significant mental health problems. In a diary research directed by famous psychologist Daniel Kahneman, 1,000 American women rated the fun factor of various daily activities. In a list of 16 possible jobs, looking after kids came in at number 12, barely above housework and well below eating. According to the UK mental health charity Mind, 20% of all mothers face major mental health issues after giving birth, and a Norwegian study of 85,000 moms revealed that having a child results in a 3-year drop in self-esteem. Naturally, it is entirely feasible to live a happy and fulfilling life while having children. But there are enough drawbacks that I believe it makes sense to steer clear of the continual "you should have children" narrative. The liberties that come with living a child-free life are certainly something to be thankful for. We are continually reminded to live a healthy life in a world of health bloggers, clean eating Instagram profiles, and fad diets. Going too far in our pursuit of health, though, isn't always a healthy path to happiness, just as it is with money and success. Nowadays, we frequently criticize those who don't live up to our standards. Think about obesity. In general, society is not fond of obese people. They are deemed to have made poor choices, which directly discriminates against those who are more powerful. For instance, in a Swedish study, researchers sent recruiters identical CVs that had only the images changed such that the candidates seemed to be overweight in one of the versions. 8% fewer interviews were given to the fat candidates. But does being overweight bring you sadness? According to studies studying the connection between happiness and the body mass index, a measure of obesity, being overweight does not significantly reduce happiness until you reach the level of morbid obesity, which is defined as being 100 pounds or more over your ideal weight. Simply obese persons occasionally express less life satisfaction than those of normal weight, but importantly, they primarily report this when residing in an environment with normal weight residents. Their pleasure is not impacted by their weight, rather, it is the social norm. Consider how mental health care is neglected if you need any more convincing that prioritizing physical health can be a lousy path to pleasure. If you have a physical health issue, you may typically expect care in industrialized nations. But when it comes to mental health, the opposite is true. People with anorexia nervosa, which has the highest mortality rate of all mental health diseases, are frequently denied treatment in the United Kingdom on the grounds that they haven't lost enough weight to warrant it. They receive no therapy despite the fact that their mental health obviously justifies it since they don't meet the criteria for physical care. Then perhaps we ought to reconsider how we view health. The way we handle diseases related to bodily and mental health needs more careful consideration. And we should acknowledge that, on occasion, making unhealthy decisions can make certain individuals happy. When the author, for example, went out and partied hard, he put his enjoyment before his health, whereas others who we blame for being obese might get pleasure from pizza that overcomes any negative effects on their health. The author questions why such decisions should be treated so harshly if they make people happy. Our outlook on life is largely supported by our faith in free will. However, the more we understand about the facts and science behind human behavior, the more we realize how greatly overstated our capacity to control our lives, our free will, is. Your upbringing and your parents' choices have a significant impact on who you are and the life you lead. your parents' financial situation has a significant impact. For instance, in the United States, your likelihood of attending college increases by 0.7% for every 1% increase in your parents' family income. Then think about how detrimental a terrible childhood may be. In the United States, more than 90% of juvenile criminals have had a traumatic childhood. Although not every child who grows up in trauma will go on to offend, it's difficult to ignore the relationship between the two. Upbringing therefore counts, but so do other uncontrollable variables like plain luck. Our lives are affected in a variety of ways by luck. For instance, studies have revealed that children who are born at the end of the school year are disadvantageous in both the United States and the United Kingdom. It is more difficult for them to study since their brains are less developed than those of their colleagues who were born earlier in the same academic year. As a result, kids do worse on exams, which could have long-lasting effects. We also need to consider the circumstances in which we make decisions. In an experiment conducted in a mall in New Jersey, participants were asked to complete IQ and cognitive function tests. Prior to the event, participants were advised to imagine that their car required $1,500 in repairs. The test results analysis revealed that having the $1,500 repair cost at the back of the minds of wealthier individuals had no effect on their cognitive function. However, the stress of the financial threat decreased test performance for those who were poorer. People who are continuously worried about how to pay their bills are less able to think properly than those of us who are fortunate enough to have secure financial situations. These are only a few instances of the ways that our lives are decided for us rather than by us. We can begin to view the world a little bit differently if we acknowledge that free choice has its limitations. We might strive harder to create a more equitable and joyous society by being less harsh in our judgment of others' actions or life circumstances. Deeply ingrained societal norms about how we ought to live our lives include working toward success and a high wage, getting married and starting a family, and maintaining good health. But striving to live up to these standards blindly can lead to dissatisfaction. The best way to achieve lasting happiness is to think about what actually fulfills you and to disregard what society tells you to do. What you ought to do in order to put your newfound information to use. When making decisions in your own life, consider what you would want for your friends. It might be challenging to resist the influence of societal narratives. Consider your own life choices in the same way as you would a buddy. Would you prefer it if your best buddy were married but frequently unhappy? Or perhaps never lonely but single? By doing so, we can get a clearer understanding of what actually makes us happy as opposed to what society merely expects of us. Thanks for watching.